you woke up in a box where some of the rooms have deadly traps in them and others are safe, could you navigate the maze and escape? Well, you're wrong, and I'm here to tell you why. If you have a strategy to escape the cube, let me know in the comments. We start off following a guy named Alderson who wakes up in this sci-fi looking cube with 6 hatches, one on each wall, the floor, and the ceiling. The room he started in was a white colored room. He starts opening hatches and each room is a different color. When he opens up the hatch with the blue room, it makes a strange noise. When he opens up the red room, the same sound plays. But when he opens up the orange room, there is nothing. Of course, it's impossible to know what this means. He wasn't exactly dropped in here with an instruction manual. I tried to find some information on the sound that plays in the different rooms since the movie never tells us anything, but I couldn't find anything. Anyways, he basically has 2 choices, sit still or try his luck in one of the other rooms. He goes into the orange room, and unfortunately he chose a trapped room. There's no second chances in the cube. Next, we meet a guy named Quentin who is climbing up into this room with an unconscious guy named Worth. One of the hatches start to open and Quentin yanks in a woman named Holloway who is a doctor. After scaring the shit out of this woman, another sound plays. This one sounds like some gears are shifting. Another woman named Levin shows up, followed by a guy named Ren. Ren shows them how to check for traps by tying his boots together and throwing one in and seeing if it sets off a trap. They use this boot method to go through several rooms when finally Levin notices that there are numbers leading into each room. Of course, they have no idea what these numbers mean. Without context, they could mean anything. Ren boots another room. It seems safe, but he stops Quentin from going in, saying that the air seems dry in there and that there could be a molecular chemical sensor that wouldn't be set off by the boot. I have no idea how he could possibly tell that, but okay, whatever. As he is climbing into another hatch, Quentin figures out that he's some guy known as the Wren, a guy who's escaped out of 7 prisons. He seems very confident that he's going to make it out of here and tells the others to shut up and be useful or he's going to leave them behind. I don't really understand the confidence here. I mean, does this place look like a prison? Okay, it does seem a bit like a prison, but not one that you'd be sent to after being arrested for something. Also, how does breaking out of jail teach you about chemical sensors? So naturally, when he jumps into the next room, he gets sprayed in the face with acid and dies. At least with his death, that proves that tossing a boot in a room isn't a foolproof plan and they're going to have to come up with some other means for testing the rooms. He did manage to climb back out of the cube before he died, so they could use his body to check for traps. They could make a rope out of their clothes like they do later to let Holloway climb out of the cube to get a closer look at the outer shell, and toss his body into the next cube and if it's trapped, fish it out with the rope. Using his entire body is a little risky. The traps could cut him up too much to fish out or sever the part of him that they have the rope tied to, so a better option might be to break him into pieces and throw it into the next room. I mean, it's pretty gross, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. Quentin starts trying to get information out of the others, but everyone is being a huge pain in the ass. But eventually, we find out that Holloway is a doctor, Levin is a math student, and Worth says that he works in some office. The only one that's really useful here is Levin. The numbers are 3 sequences of 3-digit numbers, and she figures out that the rooms that have prime numbers are the ones that have traps in them. Prime numbers, by the way, are numbers that can only be divided by itself and 1 without remainders. This makes Levin the most important member of the group, so it was pretty stupid of her to be the one to just jump into the other room first. I also want to point out that someone being able to figure this out is really unrealistic. If you drop a group of random people in here, 99% of them would never figure this out. It also shows her later scratching into metal with a plastic button that I found pretty funny. Sorry, but I think you're gonna have to be able to do this in your head. Unfortunately, knowing whether a room is safe or not is only part of the problem. They still have no idea where an exit might be, so they're basically just following safe room to safe room and hoping they find a way out. That is, until they come to a room that is trapped on all sides. The only one they haven't checked yet is the one on the ceiling, because obviously it's the most pain in the ass. As Quentin opens the door, a guy named Kazan falls through who seems to have some kind of mental disability. They continue moving from room to room with their prime number method when...
Stop! In front of you!
It seems like this method is not as foolproof as they thought it was. It's pretty convenient that this trap went off slow enough to give Quentin time to jump out of it. His plot armor's coming in real thick right here. After their little mishap, Worth reveals that he was an engineer that worked on designing the outer shell. He claims to not know anything about the interior of the cube. The only sort of useful information that he knows is that the cube does not sit flush with the shell and that there's about 1 cube of space between the interior and the exterior. When pushed further, he claims that there is nobody in charge of it, that they just built it because they could, and that there was no mastermind behind it, which makes zero sense. Somebody had to have the idea and the means to start it. After Quentin beats up Worth, Levin questions him further, and they find out that there is a door on one side of the cube, but he doesn't know which side it's on. He also tells them that the cube is 434 feet squared. Levin then measures the cube and determines that it's 14 by 14 feet in diameter. She figures out that there are 17,576 total rooms. That is one big ass cube. She also comes to the conclusion that the numbers are like coordinates on a 3D plane so that she can use them to determine their location. Using the coordinates, she believes that they are 7 rooms away from the side. As they continue, she finds a problem with her coordinate theory.
What's the matter?
These coordinates, 14, 27, 14.
What about him?
Well, they don't make sense. Assuming the cube is 26 rooms across, there can't be a coordinate larger than 26. If this were right, then we would be outside of the cube.
As they continue, they come across a room that has traps on all sides. The room underneath has a sound-activated trap that they decide to cross. It's a risky move, especially having Kazan with them. They discuss leaving him behind in another room, but Holloway won't have it. They make Worth go first. He makes it across with no issue, followed by Levin. For some stupid reason, Worth climbs back into the room to help Holloway. As she climbs down at the same time, Kazan is also climbing in, which means there are 3 people in the trapped room at once. This is incredibly stupid. There should have been only 1 person in the room at a time, and their punishment should have been all of them getting shish kebabbed. Kazan ends up climbing down the wrong way, and as he crosses the room, his pants get stuck on the door handle. He almost screams, which would have put an end to him and Holloway. They're dead weight anyways. As Quentin is about to climb in the hatch, the other door they had opened closes, and he shuts his eyes thinking it might activate the trap and kill him. After a sigh of relief, he gets pissed at Kazan for this, but it would not have been an issue if he didn't just stop for no reason. Honestly, this room should have killed all 5 of them. Quentin's hissy fit gets interrupted when they realize they are 1 room away from the edge, and it turns out that Worth was right. There seems to be about 1 cube worth of space between the interior cubes and the outer shell. It's too dark for them to see anything, so they decide to lower Holloway out of the cube to try and get a better look. This is really stupid. They're basically just risking her life for no reason. Like I said before, it's way too dark to be able to see anything, and lowering her another 20 feet or so isn't going to help them. Besides, the door is probably part of the wall that is not even visible until it opens up. If they really wanted to try and find the door, they should try and climb up to the top and look over the edge, or possibly towards the bottom and walk around the outside. They also should have tied off their makeshift rope on one of the door handles if they wanted to attempt this. Holloway also decides to try and play tag with the wall for some reason. It's pretty dark in there, but you can clearly see that it's a solid wall, and she just makes it harder for them to hold on to her for no reason. As she is jumping, the entire cube shakes, making everyone lose their grip. Quentin manages to grab the rope and keep Holloway from kissing the ground. He also pulls Holloway up just to drop her ass for basically no reason. I mean, they had arguments, but that's not a good enough reason to kill her. Especially since you still need cannon fodder to check the rooms for traps. They decide to stay here and take a nap before moving on. While everyone is sleeping, Quentin decides to try and take Levin and leave the other 2 behind. To no one's surprise, Levin doesn't want to go with him by herself. Worth and Kazan heard her yell, "Get away from me," and Worth attacks him from behind. During the confrontation, he basically admits to dropping Holloway on purpose.
You dropped her.
After he kicks Worth's ass, he throws him down the hatch that's on the floor. Worth then starts laughing hysterically because the cube he was thrown into has Ren's corpse lying in it. This is actually incredibly lucky because Worth realizes that the only way it's possible for them to be back in this cube is if the cubes are moving. He opens up the hatch leading to the cube that Ren got killed in, and there's nothing there, showing that they are still at the edge of the cube. I want to mention that the odds of them finding that one cube again out of 17,576 cubes is extremely unlikely. Realistically, if they haven't figured this out yet, they never would have. With this information, Levin figures out that the coordinates on each cube is the cube's starting position. She believes that the cube they encountered earlier with the starting coordinates that put it outside is most likely the bridge cube, and that's the one they need to find in order to get out of here alive. The problem is, how do you find a single cube out of the 17,576 cubes that are moving? Levin comes up with a way to find the cube, which of course involves a lot of math that I don't understand and I don't care enough to try to, so moving on. Levin determines that they are 4 cubes away. The problem is the prime number method they were using to detect trapped rooms doesn't work. They have to find the power of the prime numbers, and the numbers are too big for Levin to do. And they can't use the boot method because Quentin threw out their last boot.
Well, you threw out our last boot, you fucking idiot.
Levin says she can't calculate the factors of 567. Kazan blurts out the number 2. And Levin thinks that he is saying the factors, so she asks him to calculate the factor of a number that she can verify.
What, are you fucking kidding?
Kazan, how many factors does 30 have?
3,
How about 7?
1, gumdrop.
Worth then gives Kazan the rest of the numbers to the next room, and he gives them the factors. Based on Kazan's answers, the next room is safe. It would have still been nice if they had that boot just to verify, but instead, Quentin throws Worth into the next room. I mean, he could have just used Ren's corpse, but you know, whatever.
Kazan. My man.
My man! My man!
As they cross into the next cube, Worth shuts the hatch on Quentin's throat. He holds Quentin here long enough for Kazan and Levin to determine whether the next room is safe or not. As Quentin chases them into the next cube, Worth opens the hatch under his feet, making him fall down into another cube. Take a drink every time I say cube in this video. On second thought, don't do that. You'll probably get alcohol poisoning. There's actually no possible way that this could have worked. First of all, he has to step on the door, and there's no guarantee he would do that. Second of all, the hatches pull out and then slide over, so it's not possible to pull this little trick. Anyways, with the Quentin problem dealt with, they continue moving through cubes until they come to the cube right before the bridge cube. All they have to do is wait for the bridge cube to move into place, and they have their freedom. The cube moves into place, and after they check to make sure it's safe, they cross into it. But unfortunately, Kazan is too slow and the cube moves without him. They can hear Kazan crying, and Worth goes back to get him, I guess just getting lucky that neither of the rooms he goes through are trapped. While that's going on, Levin finds a piece of her broken glasses on the floor, telling her that this is the cube they started in, and apparently this isn't the bridge cube, it's the cube next to it. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. The exit appears, and Worth sits down. What are you waiting for? Move your asses. Worth says he has nothing out there and blames himself for this, so he's going to stay.
What is out there?
That's actually a pretty good question. Probably some armed security guards that are waiting to execute you. Before she can get an answer to her question, Quentin shows up and impales her with a hatch handle. There is no way this guy would have been able to find them, even if that fall didn't kill him. They moved through multiple cubes, and some of the cubes also moved. He definitely would have been killed by a trap. Quentin then stabs Worth with the handle. Kazan then climbs out of the cube, and as Quentin tries to follow him, Worth grabs his leg and holds him so he gets caught in between the moving cubes. That's karma for killing Levin, who is pretty much the only one who is useful in this movie, even if all the math didn't make sense. In the end, Kazan is the only one who makes it out, although it's unclear if he survived or not. All we see is him walking into a bright light. I like to think that he survived, but in all honesty, he probably didn't. I highly doubt whoever put them in this cube is going to allow them to just leave and go to the cops. So at the end of the day, whether it's one of the traps, the psycho you're stuck in here with, or a firing squad waiting for you on the outside, you are not making it out of here alive. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out another? Here's a playlist to my other videos. And remember,
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.